Welcome to Bricks of Norway.
Hi there, my name is Paul. It sure has been a long time since my last video, and, well, time flies. And I spent some time in the leg room, but I haven't really built anything special. I tried to tidy up, but as you can see, I still have a big job behind me, or in front of me, or whatever. And I've tried to complete some old sets that was incomplete, and I tried to complete and finish some old projects that have been lying around for a year or two. But nothing big and nothing special. Nothing that has inspired me to make any videos. And I have a couple of more projects going on, just lying around and floating around in my head and on the desk and everywhere else. But I've done something that I thought I was going to show you. And since I'm going to Kennedy Space Center this summer on a vacation with my kids, as part of the preparation for the going there, a couple of weeks ago, I built together with my kids a Centaur 21309 NASA Apollo Saturn V. I thought that was a good preparation for going to the Kennedy Space Center. My son knows a lot about space and the space program. And he also had the visit of an ex-technician from NASA that has been working with the space program and spoke to his class. So building the Apollo 5 rocket was, the Saturn V rocket was fun. It's a bit repetitive, but it's okay. My kids swapped turns on building one or two pages each before swapping. I was finding parts for them and helping them putting things together and making sure that things were properly put together. So it was a fun family project. The rocket is quite impressive, I think. It's 115 centimeters long or high, depending on which way you're storing it. As of now, it's just sitting on a counter in the house. I'm not sure what I'll do about displaying it. I have some ideas, and I'll have to see what I will be up to and what's feasible. And I think that the set is quite detailed. They really captured the design and the looks of the real rocket. Well, mostly there is only external details, but you can separate it into the 3 stages and all have their own engines that you can see if you separate it. And on the top module, you can open it and pick out the Lunar Lander module, put on a display in front of the rocket. So I think that's quite nice. I know it has 3 nano astronauts. Well, I guess there are 4 included, but there's 1 for spare. So I think that's a nice twist that you can have it inside or put it in front. You also have a little model of the re-entry capsule after it has landed at sea with the inflatable devices around. Put on a blue plate, round blue plate, to simulate what it looks like when it has re-entered the atmosphere and landed in the ocean and waiting for pickup. The model is built in this 1 to 110th scale, and as it said, it's 115 centimeters high or long. The instructions include some details about the moon landing and the rocket, and about the designer. Valerido, aka What's Up Today, and Felix Season, aka What's Up Fun, work closely together to create this fantastic model of the Apollo 11 mission for the LEGO ideas. They said that they worked almost a year on this model, and I can understand that with such much details and being such a fantastic model. From LEGO, Michael Psaki, Carl Thomas Merriam, and Austin William Carlson participated in finalizing this set. Michael Saki and Carl Thomas Merriam both were space fanatics, so they decided that they wanted to work on this project. They approached the ideas team and said that we want to help develop this project. And they said that the hardest thing to implement was the ability to separate the different models and still sitting tightly together when needed. Some background on the Apollo program. On the 25th of May 1961, John F. Kennedy challenged his country to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And they did it, as the Apollo 11 mission in 1969 landed with 2 astronauts on the surface of the moon. There were several other missions, Apollo missions, and Apollo 8 to 17 was the one that left low Earth orbit and traveled around the moon or put people on the moon. And Saturn V was the most powerful rocket in the Saturn program, and still has the highest payload ever really launched into low Earth orbit, and it still is the only rocket that has left low Earth orbit with people. A bit special is that Apollo mission 7 and 9 was Earth orbiting missions, and Apollo 8 and 10 was just orbiting the moon for testing various things in the preparation for landing on the moon. Apollo 13 never landed people on the moon because of malfunction, and 6 other missions put people on the moon and returned with lots of scientific data and almost 400 kilos of rock samples. And the Apollo 11 landed the astronauts on the moon on the 20th of July 1969. And one interesting fact about the set is that this set 21309 has 1969 pieces, the same amount of pieces as the year when NASA landed the Apollo 11 mission on the moon. A nice little detail, I think. The Apollo 11 mission lasted for 195 hours, 18 minutes and 35 seconds, almost 36 minutes more than planned. The Lunar Lander was called Eagle, as most of you might know, from the famous word as the Eagle has landed. The command module was called Columbia. The Lunar Lander landed on the moon in the Sea of Tranquility. Of the 3 astronauts on the Apollo 11 mission, only 2 of them landed on the moon. One astronaut was left in the command module orbiting the moon, waiting for his partners to return from the moon. So when the 2 astronauts left the moon and later joined the command module where the last astronaut was, when they docked the Lunar Lander with the command module, they later dropped the Lunar Lander on the way back to Earth. And there was, of course, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin that landed on the moon with the Apollo 11 mission. They are 2 of the most known astronauts in the world. I guess they are on the top 3 with Gagarin, the Russian cosmonaut that entered space as the first human. Michael Collin, the 3rd astronaut that was left in the command module, is not as famous as his 2 fellow astronauts, Edwin Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. But it still was an important part of the mission. Without him, I guess they never would have been able to return from Earth and from the moon back to the Earth. They needed someone to stay in the command module. They also built set number 10226 NASA Apollo 11 Lunar Lander set with my kids. That was later than the Saturn V rocket. This set has 1097 pieces and sits on a display that represents the surface of the moon with some rocks and craters. The set has 2 minifig astronauts and therefore is a larger scale than the Apollo Saturn V rocket, but it's from the same Apollo mission 11. I think this is a great set. You can detach the return model of the Lunar lunar module that returned to the command module, and while leaving the landing part left on the moon, together with the flag they left there. This set was, well, as the Saturn V rocket, there's some interesting uses of pieces to make the round shape of the rocket and the shape of the Lunar Lander. And some pieces are upside down, some are straight the right way, and some are studs not on top or on the left or right, east and west, north and south. So I like this set, and I will try to display it together with the Saturn V rocket. Hopefully I will find some space for that. It's easier to place because it's won't fall over that easily as the Saturn V rocket if you place it vertically, and it won't take that much space as the Saturn V rocket if you place it horizontally. I built this set with the kids. Same reason with the Saturn V rocket preparation for going to the Kennedy Space Center. The set was designed by Lars Jo Hilding, and of course one of the most famous quotes in life was made by Neil Armstrong. That's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. As I said, I'll be going to the Kennedy Space Center with my kids this summer. We'll have hopefully a good holiday, nice holiday, going to the States, visiting Kennedy Space Center and all the things. Maybe we'll experience and launch while we are there. Or we'll just have fun and walk around and watch everything on display there. And watching the Apollo 5, watching the Saturn V rocket in real will be nice after having built the rocket in Lego. Even though I know it's a big rocket, it's long. In real life it's about 111 meters high, but I don't think I'll really apprehend the size of it until I'm next to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing the rocket and visiting Kennedy Space Center. That has been a dream for many years. I could tell you a lot about the Saturn V rocket and the Apollo missions, but I guess it will be easier for you to read about it on, well, your preferred place instead of me telling you about it and probably telling you something wrong. But the Apollo missions really was a big breakthrough with the space program. Even though the Americans weren't the first in space, that were the Russians. But the Americans are still the only ones that have put people on the moon. And the Russians gave up after the Americans succeeded. Later on, America has sent several missions to Mars with rovers. China has also started to sending rovers into space and has become an important part of international space programs. India is also making huge progress. Europe, with its ESA, has its own program, but they are cooperating much with NASA, but they also have their own rockets. And Norway, where I'm from, have made payloads for rockets several times, or part of payloads, both for American and European missions. it would be nice to see some sets perhaps about other part of the space program, either from Europe or Russia, or perhaps SpaceX, the new SpaceX program, the rockets from SpaceX. And, well, LEGO has released several versions of the space shuttle, both in city scale and in larger scales, and in Technic. And they have the International Space Station. The Saturn V set I bought used. The Apollo 11 Lunar Lander I bought new. But I think they are great additions to my collection. So I think this is all for today. I wish you all a good summer, or winter if you're living on the southern hemisphere. Hopefully it won't take that long until my next video. Perhaps I'll make some videos after returning from the States. Perhaps I'll finish some projects that I can make a video about. We'll have to see. But as always, if you are able to help someone in need, please do.
Enjoy!